How terrifying can human nature be? A girl kissed her beloved teacher. Afterward, the teacher solemnly told her,
Det synes jeg, du skal give til drengene.
The blunt reprimand planted resentment in the child. She turned and approached the kindergarten director.
Jeg hader Lucas.
Facing questioning, the girl fabricated accusations about the teacher exposing himself. The director initially dismissed it, but the vivid details she described, graphic scenes no 6-year-old could imagine.
Hvorfor siger du det?
Fordi det gør den.
After heavy silence, the director chose to believe her. Unbeknownst to all, the scenes the girl described merely came from forbidden images on her brother's computer. Next morning, Lucas was summoned. The director cautiously relayed the allegations.
Barnet siger, der er sket ting imellem jer, som normalt kun bør ske mellem voksne mennesker.
Confused and blindsided,
Der er blevet sagt, Grete.
Ja, det kan jeg ikke sige.
he received indefinite administrative leave pending investigation. Child psychologists conducted delicate evaluations, asking veiled questions to avoid traumatizing the girl.
Får du det ubehageligt nu, hvor vi snakker om Lucas? Men det er fordi, du ikke kan lide det.
Within hours, experts confirmed the director's suspicions.
Er det jo politiets arbejde, det her.
Parents received shocking notifications at an emergency meeting. The director warned all families, monitor your children for behavioral changes. Gasps filled the room. How could Lucas, their kind, principled teacher, be such a hypocritical beast? That night, Lucas's son called weeping.
Sagde du, at der er sket alt muligt klamt nede i børnehaven?
The director had informed his ex-wife. Furious, Lucas confronted the director next dawn. She recoiled as if facing poison.
Stop! Hvordan kan du finde på sådan noget? Du må være syg.
Find på hvad fanden er det, jeg har gjort?
Still clueless about specific charges, Lucas could only warn, keep my son out of this. During their argument, the director accidentally revealed the girl's name.
Er det klar? Grete, er det klar?
Du stopper her.
Jeg står lige og snakker med Grete, Johan. Hvad?
Jeg vil gerne...
Det er min bedste vens datter, det ved du godt, ikke?
As Lucas pressed for answers, a self-righteous parent physically ejected him. Children who once hugged him daily now stared with alienating distrust. Desperate, Lucas visited the accuser's father, his longtime friend.
Du vil, jeg skal spørge Clara.
Ja, selvfølgelig. Hvad mener du?
Jeg kender min lille pige, og hun lyver ikke, og det har hun aldrig nogensinde gjort. Så hvorfor skulle hun lyve nu?
Mid-conversation, the man suddenly wept, whether for his daughter's trauma or friendship's betrayal, unclear.
Theo, jeg har ikke været din datter. Det ved du også godt, jeg ikke har, ikke? Tror du på, hvad jeg siger, eller tror du ikke på det? Theo, jeg har ikke været din datter. Tror du for helvede heller ikke.
Jeg ved ikke, Lucas. Jeg ved ikke.
When the wife appeared,
Kan gå nu.
Vil du være sød og svare, hvad har jeg gjort?
Forsvind ud herfra.
Hvad er det, du forestiller dig, der er sket? Må jeg få et svar på det? Hvad har hun fortalt dig?
Ved du hvad? Ud! Jeg gider ikke sidde her og diskutere med dig.
Lucas had to leave. 3 steps away, the friend shoved him against a wall.
Hvis du har rørt min lille datter, så får du en kugle. Lige i panden. Og det tror du har, for det siger hun jo ikke.
Commotion drew Clara downstairs.
Hej, klar.
Hej, Lucas.
Despite the assault, Lucas managed a strained greeting before escaping. Witnessing her father's violence, Clara finally resolved to confess.
Det var bare mig, der sagde noget dumt noget. Og nu er alle i børnehaven også begyndt at tale om det. De siger alt muligt.
Det er lidt svært at forstå, men måske er det sådan her, at dit hoved vil helst ikke huske, hvad der er sket, fordi det ikke er særlig rart at tænke på, men Clara, det er sket.
But after contemplative silence, her mother inexplicably doubled down on the lie. The scandal spread like wildfire. More parents claimed their children were abused. They pressured Lucas's girlfriend to help gather evidence.
Okay.
She resisted believing until witnessing Clara visit Lucas alone.
Jeg vil bare spørge, om jeg må gå med Fanny.
Are you here to play? Lucas knelt gently.
Hvad er det, jeg skulle have gjort ved den?
Så ved jeg ikke. Jeg kan ikke huske det mere. Det er også de andre.
Hvem andre? Hvem er det? Klar, hvem andre er det?
The girl retreated like a startled fawn. From the shadows, the girlfriend watched Clara burst into terrified tears, a scene etching doubt in her heart.
Lucas, you touched that girl?
Well,
You are not a sick person, are you?
Lucas's eyes turned red. He never expected even those closest to him to start doubting him. At last, the man who had always endured everything finally broke down.
hvis du skal tage dine ting, så skal du gå nu.
Furious, he threw his girlfriend out of the house. Then he lay in bed in despair for days. It wasn't until his son showed up that his life got back on track. But there was nothing he could do about the rumors that had ruined his father's reputation. Even he himself was treated differently. That day, his son went grocery shopping. The manager told him they were no longer welcome there.
Hvorfor?
Det skal I bare ikke.
Helpless, he left with a heavy heart. Just as he reached home, he saw his father being taken away by the police.
Skal jeg gå ind og ringe til mor, og så sige, at hun skal komme og hente dig, ikke? Er du okay?
Ignoring his father's instructions, he went straight to his dad's best friend's house, begging him to help. After all, they used to be the closest of friends.
Du er sådan en god dreng. Du skal ikke lægges til last for noget, han har gjort, vel? Det...
Men han har jo ikke gjort det, I siger. Hvorfor lå du min far?
Det gør jeg ikke.
Clara, her. Kom her.
Kom, Clara, nu går vi op.
Kom her.
Lige snart.
Theo,
Stop.
du slipper dig.
Kom, lille skat.
Giv lige slip. Tror du ikke det?
Markus, så stopper der. Er du med? Så tror jeg lige, du lader pigen være. Du har det fandme nu. Hvad fanden det er?
Spejl snak!
But his desperate plea only stirred up more anger. A group of men dragged him outside and beat him mercilessly. Luckily, his father's friend managed to stop them, or they might have killed him.
Kom hjem. Kom hjem. Ja, skrid med dig. Smut hjem med dig. Kom med. Skrid så med dig.
Hvor er du fucking svin, mand? Fucking svin, mand!
Bruised and battered, the boy was taken in by his uncle. At that moment, his uncle's family was trying to figure out a way to help his father. The trial was set for 8 a.m. the next day. From what they had gathered, all the children's statements were consistent. They even described the crime scene in detail, the basement of Lucas's house. They could even name the colors of the sofa and the wallpaper.
Da politiet så kørte hjem og undersøgte jeres hus her i formiddags.
Vi slet ikke har nogen kælder.
Nemlig.
De har fortalt en historie om kælder, som ikke er der.
Jeg ved ikke, om det er deres egen fantasi et eller andet, de går og finder på nede på legepladsen og snakker med hinanden. Det er meget almindeligt kendt i sådan nogle sager her, at børn de beskriver detaljer, som for eksempel jeres kælder, som ikke... Og det gør de jo desværre også rigtig ofte.
The next morning, Lucas was acquitted. Father and son embraced tightly. They thought life was finally back on track, but their nightmare had only just begun. That evening, Lucas was cooking dinner, enjoying a rare moment with his son.
Siden, mand.
Bliv her.
Lucas grabbed a baseball bat and stepped out to check.
Hello?
Whoever it was had already disappeared. Not far away, a black bag lay on the ground. Cautiously, he walked over and opened it. Inside was his beloved dog.
Kræfter vi hen!
Hold op, hold op, hold op.
Færdig, mand!
Hold op med den her.
Slå ihjel!
The law had proven his innocence, but people had no intention of letting him go. To them, Lucas had simply escaped legal punishment. Now, they would deliver justice in their own way. One day, Lucas went to the supermarket to buy meat. The clerk told him they were all out.
De der svinekronetter. Du kan ikke få noget her. Jeg har ret til at købe ind her.
When Lucas refused to leave, the clerk wiped his hands, then knocked him to the ground with a punch. The manager rushed over. Seeing that it was Lucas, he immediately ordered the clerk to throw him out. As Lucas looked around at the disgusted faces, he decided to stand up for himself. But what awaited him was an even more brutal beating. After the clerks had beaten him to their satisfaction, they tossed him out like a stray dog.
Kom bag. Det er sidste gang, du kommer her.
Lucas struggled to his feet, dragging his battered body back into the store.
Så vil jeg gerne have mine ting.
Giv ham nu bare hans vej.
At last, he got what he came for. Limping, he walked out of the supermarket. His old friend and his family happened to witness the scene. Watching his former best friend reduced to this because of his daughter's lie, he lowered his head in shame. Lucas sat in the darkness, lost in thought for a long time. Suddenly, it was as if he had made up his mind. He washed the blood off in the bathroom, changed into a clean, well-fitted suit, then downed a glass of strong liquor. After that, he headed to the church. It was Christmas Eve. The townspeople had gathered here to pray. When Lucas, covered in wounds, stepped inside, shock spread across every face. He took a seat in an empty spot. As the bishop began to pray, he turned to look at his old friend, at the one who had started it all.
Skyld mit hjerte, at jeg af dit ord kan lære at sørge over mine synder.
Their gazes locked from across the room, holding for a long time. Then the children went on stage to sing. Clara was among them. Watching the girl who had once falsely accused him, now looking like an innocent little angel, a wave of unbearable injustice surged in his chest. He couldn't help but turn around again, only to see the couple whispering to each other while glancing his way. Something inside him began to unravel. After everything they had done to him, why were they still talking about him behind his back?
And now...
The resentment and anger built to the breaking point. Lucas couldn't take it anymore. He rose to his feet and walked straight to his old friend.
Vil du sige noget til mig? Hvad? Kom nu, vil du sige noget til mig?
Hvad laver du, mand?
Vil du sige noget til mig? Hold op, Lukas. Vil du sige noget til mig? Hvad? Kom nu! Hold op, Lukas! Tag det roligt. Hele byen står og hører på dig, mand. Tag det roligt, ikke? Sig det! Tag det roligt, Lukas.
Psykopat!
Kom af, Lukas. Så kom! Hvad vil du sige, mand? Hvad vil du sige?
Stop ham!
Hvad?
Det kan du godt lige holde op med den fucking psykopat!
Jeg har lov til lige at snakke med Theo. Prøv at kigge lige ind i mine øjne. Kig ind i mine øjne. Kig. Hvad kan du se? Kan du se noget? Hvad siger du? Hvad? Ingenting. Der er ingenting. Der er ingenting.
After all that had happened, his friend had finally begun to realize that maybe Lucas had been wrong. Seeing her father in such distress, Clara finally told the truth.
Bare mig, der sagde noget dumt noget.
Her father said nothing. He simply tucked his daughter in, then went to the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of liquor and 2 cuts of meat, and headed to Lucas's house in the middle of the night. There were no words of apology. The 2 men just sat there in silence. In the end, Lucas picked up his glass and chose to forgive. Time passed quickly. A year later, Lucas held a coming-of-age ceremony for his son. The entire town came to celebrate. They shook his hand and hugged him warmly, as if nothing had ever happened. After dinner, Clara suddenly appeared at the door. Just like before, she hesitated to step on the lines of the floor.
Nå, hvad skal vi gøre med de streger?
Det ved jeg ikke. Der er vildt mange, synes jeg.
Ja.
Lucas hesitated too, but in the end, he walked over and gently picked up the girl who had nearly destroyed him.
Med meget lange skridt. Så klarer vi den.
Tak.
Selv tak.
The gathering ended, and a group of them went out hunting. Lucas and his son got separated, so he took his time, quietly admiring the scenery. He turned his head just in time to see a shadowy figure lowering a rifle. Lucas stared, still shaken. The man chambered another round but didn't pull the trigger. In the end, he turned away, walking off into the setting sun. Lucas never saw his face clearly because the man stood on higher moral ground, stood in the light.